Hey guys, so today I'm gonna be reading more ghost stories, so yeah, let's just get right into the video. I was driving across country with my mum and sister. I was 16, my sister 20, my mum's in her 50s. It was late, but we were well rested, still and alert. We were driving along an interstate and needed gas, and they needed to pee, so we stopped at the only rest stop in 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers on some road trip and a small grey compact car. Two men about 17 to 20 were standing outside in hoodies, statues still. The teenagers were to our left. When we got there, everything felt wrong. There was a deep and unsettling feeling about the place, and we'd not felt that way at any other rest stop. We'd been on the road for days and seen many rest stops at night and had never been afraid until then. My mum and sister went inside and I stayed in the car. I heard the teenagers say they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work and they left in a hurry. I was mostly watching the car in front and the two men who had still not moved at all. Not an inch. They weren't talking. They weren't on phones. There was no light anywhere but the dim overhead lights on the gas station awning. They were just standing there, still as stone. Maybe they're just statues. My sister and mum came running back out to the car, and when they got in, the two men slowly turned to look at us while not moving or pivoting the rest of their bodies. And I swear, we all saw the same thing. They had eyes dark as pitch and empty. Truly empty, not black, not reflecting any light at all. Just a void. Like, they don't have any eyeballs? We booked it. We have not travelled in excess of 100 miles per hour before and since, but that day it was warranted. We drove until we were in the next city before we got out of the car again. And you know the worst thing about it? Not the eyes, not the stillness, not the horrible feeling, not the weirdo in the gas station. He kept telling my mum and sister, "My mama will like you," over and over while mopping the same spot on the floor with a dry mop and an empty bucket. It was the fact that we couldn't find the place on any map. We knew exactly which spot on the interstate to look, and we couldn't find it on Google Maps or any paper map we had. We even asked locals about the creepy gas station out on the stretch of the road to confuse looks, and are you sure you aren't travelling on highway and not interstate? We travelled on that interstate since, and there was no rest stop. Are you telling me it was a ghost rest stop? And they went to the wrong rest stop? That is so creepy. Anyone who just stands still and looks at you is creepy. No matter if they have eyes or not, you know. I used to work at this radio station in New Mexico that was listed as one of the most haunted places in the state. It was an old house that had been converted into offices. The story goes that the last owner of the house made a living by carving gravestones in the basement, and that he died while working on one. When the new owners of the building took over, they left the stone where it was. That was the mistake. Oh, of course that's the mistake, of course. I heard stories from some people who worked there back then. Shadowy figures seen in unoccupied rooms, lights going on and off for no apparent reason. Supposedly all the activity died down when the stone was moved out of there. It was the stone. Of course it was the stone. Well, most of it. When I worked there, the outline of the store was still there on the basement floor, and as I worked the night shift, I saw some weird stuff. For starters, the door to the basement was in the break room, and in order to get to the vending machine, you had to walk by the door. Most of the time, it was no big deal. But on occasion, I would start to walk past and this terrifying feeling came over me. The hair on my neck and arms stood up, and it was all I could not do to run out of there. Then one night, I went out into the offices and turned off all the lights. You know, save electricity and whatnot. I went back into the studio to keep doing my show. A little while later, I walked out and saw that all the lights were back on. There was nobody else in the building. There was also a couple of times when I watched CD players open and close on their own, which brings me to the freakiest story told to me by the overnight guy. He was doing this show playing the new song off the album, and the lights flickered for a moment. When he looked down at the display of the CD player, it was showing a different track playing, though the song he'd been playing kept going. We pulled out the album and looked for the track that was indicated as playing. It was a song called I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. Wait, what's that supposed to mean though? That's freaky. I swear, I feel like lights are always the creepiest in like haunted things, you know, flickering of lights, lights turning on and off. I don't know why, but I find that the creepiest. Oh, and TV static. Oh, I hate that so much. Years ago, two friends and I were camping in Four in a small tent, staggered with two of our heads on one side and one on the other. It was a silent and still night with fog developing in the moist woods. What sounds like muffled voice on a cell phone starts coming out from the center of the tent between all our heads. I heard someone keep asking, "Hello?" Can you hear me? Hello? My friend asks, are you hearing that? At once we all sit up and start shuffling around in the tent looking for the phone. There is no phone in the tent. I look to my friend on the other side of the tent and ask what they heard. It sounded like someone saying, hello, can you hear me? We all agreed this is what we heard, and that the sound was coming from the other side of the tent. The next morning, we find all our cell phones sitting in the car still, and there's no reception at the campground. Still sends shivers up my spine. Haunted cell phone? Do those exist? You know how there's like haunted doors and everything? Haunted cell phones. Man, there are so many haunted things, like haunted paintings. Oh, that's scary. When I was in 5th grade, once I forgot to put my school uniform in the laundry basket. So the next day I needed it for school, it was dirty. I went to have breakfast in my pajamas while I was thinking how to tell my mom I didn't have my uniform clean. When I came back to my room, there was a woman I have never seen before. In her 40s, brown dress, dark hair, ironing my uniform. I blinked and she was gone. I would have assumed I hallucinated the whole thing, but my uniform was there, clean, dried and ironed and ready for me to use. And it couldn't have been ironed by anyone else because my parents had breakfast with me and my sister was a baby. Whoa, what a nice woman, you know? Wow, they just fixed your worries. Like honestly, you're like, oh my gosh, I need this, and they did it for you. Amazing. I stayed at my grandmother's house that my father spent a large amount of time in as a kid. My father drove us there in one go and was understandably tired after a 17-hour drive. We all started to lay down and my father checked in on us before going to bed himself. As he was talking, he stopped himself and told us to cover a large mirror or you will have nightmares. Now, nightmares from a mirror of all things sounded like a little fun to me, but my brothers, who were also sleeping in the same room, asked me to cover it. I did. I asked my dad about it before he left and he said ghosts use it as an entryway. A week later, I brought it up with my grandmother and she scoffed saying, oh, this house ain't haunted. I agreed, but told her that the reason I brought it up was because my dad told me to cover a mirror. My grandmother then changed her expression and said, oh, the mirror? Apparently that mirror came from her grandmother. She worked as a nurse and took in those who were going to die, but could not pay for care on the last days, so she made her home into a hospice. Those who stayed in the room with the mirror saw things. A lovely old lady saw and heard a young lady come into her room and played a harp. She was thankful for the lovely songs, but no person was known, nor was a harp owned or heard elsewhere. A young boy found an older boy who played games with him and really knew his games. Lastly, a terrible woman saw, and this is her last words, the devil, that spat fire at her. I also got stories from my mother seeing the same young lady who played the harp, and my grandfather seeing the devil guy. My grandfather described it as a red man with horns that was too tall for the room he was in, so he was standing up straight, bent his back down to fit. It stared down at him and simply asked slowly, why are you here? I kept that mirror covered. Whoa. I mean, the lady who played the harp and the older boy who played games sounds nice. So does the devil only come out for mean people? Or like terrible people, you know? I have heard like some superstition about mirrors as well, and how you have to cover it when you sleep, especially if the mirror is across your bed. Has anyone ever heard of that? This one time when I was little, I was laying in bed with my right ear buried in my pillow. I am suddenly jolted awake by this roar that sounded like it was going directly into my right ear. I woke up startled and confused and began scanning my room for anything as my mind was almost full panic mode. When I looked to my right, I saw this little boy standing next to me. He was glowing blue, but that wasn't the first thing I noticed about him actually. He looked sad, and I remember feeling bad for him. After a minute, I tried to lean closer to him and even muttered out a faint, hey, but as soon as I did, he disappeared. A few days later, I told this story to my mother, who then informed me that the people who owned this house before us had a son who died when he was 5 in a car accident. However, it wasn't near the house. I should also note now that our house is renovated since we moved in and a second floor was added. My current theory is that the boy finally found his way back home and realized that his old home was gone. He came to me because I was the new boy of the house. Ghost kids. Ghost kids are creepy. The imagery I'm getting in my mind is just creeping me out. When I was 13, I was in front of my house in Queens practicing little BMX tricks on my bike. It was about 11 p.m. when I decided to call it a night, but before I did, I wanted to ride my bike along the waterfront in my neighborhood. When I completed the trail, I saw a woman wearing a white gown standing in front of a tree. I stopped my bike because I saw that she had no face. I thought that it was either a mannequin or I wasn't close enough to make out her features, so I shouted, "Hey!" She didn't respond. I rode my bike towards her until I was about 10 feet away, very close, and still no face. Then her head turned towards my direction. I jetted and went home and didn't bring it up to anyone for years. Oh my gosh, that's so creepy. What the heck? She just turned her head. Oh my gosh, you know those scenes where they turn their head like 360? Oh my god, that's so creepy. Well, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me in the comments down below what your thoughts are, and as always, thanks for watching. Hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!